What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today is June 6th, also known as 6/6. Add one more 6 to that, that's the scary number. So let's just dive into that. I needed a reason to make a new video. This is the top 6 mana 6/6 creatures for Commander. I mostly did my research just kind of looking at like the top creatures according to EDH rec, but my final picks for the top cards are my personal preference. So if there's one that you like that I didn't talk about today, leave a comment down below. I'm also really just talking about 99 cards. I'm not talking about Commanders. Let's get into the list. Real quick honorable mention, one legendary creature I do want to mention is Atali Primal Storm, who when he attacks, exile the top card of each player's library, then you may cast any number of spells from among those cards without paying their mana cost. Now, Atali is a pretty hard commander to build around, which is why I felt like it was okay to give him an honorable mention, but I just feel like every single time he comes down, he makes the game more exciting and more fun. Sure, he's nowhere near as good as the new Atali, especially since he doesn't do anything right away, but it's still really, really cool, so I figured I needed to give him an honorable mention. Okay, so for number 6 on my list, I have Rampaging Bay Loss, which is a beast with trample. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may create a 4/4 green creature token. This is a great way to add a ton of power to the board really quick. If you're playing a big green stompy kind of deck, this is a great card because a lot of the draw a card, if you have a creature with this much power, a lot of those check at 4, which these beasts are going to do that with. And then because you're in green, you have a lot of opportunities to hit multiple lands per turn. And then also it's obviously a staple in landfall decks because, again, multiple landfall triggers per turn. The only reason it's not higher up on the list is because 6 mana is a lot to pay, and it feels really bad to on turn 6 play this, not have another way to get more lands into play, and then you just probably wasted your turn because someone's going to try to remove it, but still really cool, really powerful. Next up is another card that would go in those green stompy decks. It's Soul of the Harvest, which is an elemental with trample, and whenever another non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may draw a card. This is how you keep these kind of decks rolling. You're going to play a bunch of creatures and you're going to find ways to refill your hand so you can keep playing more creatures. This is also only this low on the list because it's 6 mana and then you kind of probably have to wait. You probably don't have the mana to do something else right away, and that leaves it to blowout. And there are just more efficient ways to draw cards when you play more creatures. But Soul of the Harvest has a special place in my heart because it was in the first mono green deck I ever built, and every time I see it, it still performs very well. If you're not playing it, you should give it a try. Next up is Worm Coil Engine. This is a worm with Death Touch and Lifelink that's also an artifact creature, and when it dies, you create a 3/3 colorless worm, artifact creature token with Death Touch, and another one with Lifelink. This is really good in a couple different decks. It's good in big creature decks, it's good in artifact decks, it's good in sacrifice decks. It's not good in every deck, but it's good in a lot of decks. The fact that it's colorless also makes it really easy to cast, and because of these tokens, it actually becomes very hard to deal with. Yes, it's 6 mana for a creature that doesn't do anything right away unless it maybe gets a block in or something, but if someone goes to board wipe or remove it, it's probably going to leave behind these tokens, which in a lot of situations, it's actually probably better to have the 2 tokens so you can spread the damage around than it is just to have the 1 big body. So not only is Worm Coil Engine great in 1v1 formats, it is also great in Commander. Number 3 on the list is one that is a little bit more narrow, but it is way more powerful. This is Vorinclex Monstrous Raider, which is a legendary Phyrexian Praetor with trample and haste. If you would put 1 or more counters on a permanent or player, put twice that many on each of those kinds of counters on that permanent or player instead. If an opponent would put 1 or more counters on a permanent or player, they put half as many of each of those kinds instead, rounded down. I know that I originally said I wasn't going to talk about legendary creatures, but Scryfall lied to me, and I originally was going to talk about a couple other creatures that turned out to be 6 mana 6/5s, and so I just grabbed the next 6 mana 6/6 that I was like, yeah, this is really good in a lot of decks. If you have anything that has to do with counters, whether it's planeswalkers or 1/1 counters, or if you're playing poison or infect, maybe you're me and going all jank with energy counters, Vorinclex is your guy. This is going to be very good. I actually don't know how how much I like him as a commander because he is mono green, and if you are playing one of those strategies, you probably want to have other colors as well, but he is so powerful that he probably does work out just fine as a commander if you wanted to just stick with mono green. But in the 99, it's going to be one of your best cards if you are playing a deck of that style. Number 2 on the list is AvaBra Caretaker, which is a human werewolf with hexproof. At the beginning of combat on your turn, put 2 +1/+1 counters on another target creature you control. And you might be saying, hey Morgan, that's actually a 4/4, that's not a 6/6. Well, I'm getting to that because it has daybound, so if it is night, it becomes Hollowhenge Huntmaster, which is a 6/6 werewolf with hexproof. Other permanents you control have hexproof, and at the beginning of combat on your turn, put 2 +1/+1 counters on each creature you control. The main thing that makes the Huntmaster so amazing is the fact that it's giving your permanents hexproof. This is really good if you just have a lot of creatures or a lot of permanents that are giving you incremental value, whether they're drawing you extra cards, giving you extra mana, what have you. But that other ability to just make your other creatures way bigger is really powerful. And I think something that makes creature matter decks a little bit weaker in Commander and multiplayer in general is the fact that it makes it a little bit harder to close out games because you have multiple opponents with higher life totals. But with the Huntmaster, you are buffing up those creatures so much that I think you're going to be able to close it out. To be honest, this card is off the wall powerful, but the only reason it's not going to be number 1 for me is because keeping track of the day-night mechanic is really hard to do in paper. Finally, at number 1, I am going to be talking about Sun Titan. Chances are we all know Sun Titan, but I'll talk about him anyways. He's a giant with vigilance, and when he enters the battlefield or attacks, you may return target permanent card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Now, Sun Titan by himself is a pretty efficient attacker or blocker because of the vigilance, and he obviously is a big body, but the fact that his ability is able to potentially trigger multiple times is really powerful. Obviously, it's great for the late game if you had a mana rock or a small creature that you had get blown up earlier in the game. It's a great way to bring it back, but a sneaky thing that is very good with Sun Titan is he can bring back lands. If you have fetch lands, you can bring back your fetch lands, and that will count for ramping because it's not going to count as your land drop for the turn. Or if someone just was mean and blew up a land earlier, you can get it back. I don't necessarily think that Sun Titan is an auto-include in white decks, but when I am building a deck with white, I am automatically looking at Sun Titan and thinking about whether it's worth running, and I think a lot of the times it is. But that's going to be my personal top 6 6-mana 6/6 creatures. Woo! That's a mouthful. Obviously, there's a lot of good 6-mana commanders that are 6/6s that I could have talked about today, but I really wanted to talk about more of the 99 cards. But let me know in the comments if there's some that you really like that I didn't talk about today. Again, this video was purely my opinion, but I hope you have a great rest of your day. Tune in on Friday for another gameplay video. That's going to be a really fun game, and we will see you guys later.